You've probably heard it 1,000 times. Women are just impossible to understand. But let me ask you something. Is that really true? Or have we just been looking in the wrong direction? See, the problem isn't that women are complicated. The problem is most men are distracted. They're so caught up in trying to impress, to chase, to decode every little move, that they forget the one thing that changes the entire game: stillness, presence, understanding. That's where this video begins. This isn't a game of tricks. This isn't some manipulation handbook. This is about learning how to see not just look. It's about understanding the quiet, unspoken layers beneath her actions. The ones most guys never even notice. Because here's the truth. Women aren't a mystery. They're emotional beings with rhythms, patterns, and pressure points. And when you stop trying to solve them, and instead start witnessing them, with calm clarity, everything changes. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine this. You're on a date. She's quiet, distant. Most guys panic. Did I say something wrong? They fill the silence with nervous laughter, overcompensating compliments, or worse, fake confidence. But the man who understands, he doesn't chase that silence. He doesn't perform. He simply holds the space with calm. He senses something's off, not because she said it, but because he's present enough to feel it. That's not magic. That's masculine awareness. Now you might be thinking, isn't that emotional intuition just something you're born with? Not at all. It's learned. It's practiced. And it's grounded in something timeless: Stoic wisdom, the ancient. Stoics taught men to master themselves before they tried to master the world. And in modern relationships, that lesson still holds. Because a man who understands himself becomes the kind of man a woman can't stop thinking about, not because he said all the right things, but because he felt solid in who he is. In this video, we're going to explore 9 of the most overlooked, underestimated emotional weak spots that almost every woman has. Not in a predatory way, not to manipulate or control, but to connect more deeply, to stop guessing, and start understanding. Some of what you're about to hear might surprise you. Some of it might make you grin and say, "Oh man, that explains a lot." And some of it might hit a little too close to home, because you'll realize just how many times you've missed what was right in front of you. That's okay. This isn't about regret. It's about becoming better, more aware, more grounded, more magnetic. Because the truth is, while most men spend their lives chasing attention, the wise ones learn how to attract it without trying. And it all starts with understanding the quiet power of masculine presence. So before we jump in, I want you to ask yourself something. Am I showing up as the man who performs? Or the man who perceives? If you're ready to stop chasing and start understanding, you're exactly where you need to be. Let's dive in. Let's be honest. There's a version of confidence that most people mistake for the real thing. It's loud. It's flashy. It walks into a room needing to be seen. You've seen it before. The guy who can't stop talking, who throws compliments like candy, who laughs the loudest in the room to prove something. But that's not confidence. That's performance. The kind of confidence that truly impacts a woman, the kind that lingers in her mind long after you've left, is something else entirely. It's quiet. It's calm. It doesn't need to speak first, or speak often. It doesn't ask, "Do you like me?" Because it already knows the answer doesn't define its worth. This is the confidence that doesn't ask for permission. And I'll tell you this, women feel it instantly. You see, while a lot of men are chasing validation, sending that extra text just to prove they're thoughtful, over-explaining their intentions, trying to differentiate themselves from all the others, a grounded man does none of that. Not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't need approval to move forward. He doesn't flinch when she tests him. He doesn't rush to fill the silence when she pulls back. He doesn't inflate himself just to seem more impressive. Instead, He walks into a room like he already belongs there. Not in arrogance, but in inner alignment. Here's the key most men miss. Women aren't looking for bravado. They're not impressed by bravado. They're exhausted by it. They're drawn to something subtler, something deeper. Emotional strength. The kind of strength that doesn't try to control the moment, but commands it through stillness. Let me paint you a picture. Two men walk into a room. One makes noise, cracking jokes, flexing his status, seeking eyes. The other moves slowly, deliberately, doesn't say much. But when he locks eyes with someone, he doesn't look away. Guess which one she remembers. Because here's what women often won't say out loud. They want to feel like they can lean into something stronger than their chaos. Not a man who overpowers, but a man who stabilizes. And when your energy is calm, when your posture says, I'm good with who I am, she feels it, even if she doesn't fully understand why. That's the magnetic pull of masculine confidence, and it's not something you fake. You can't fake stillness. You can't fake groundedness. You either have it, or you're working on it. So how do you cultivate that kind of presence? It starts with slowing down, with speaking less and meaning more, with not chasing her attention, but respecting your own energy enough to know where it belongs. When she plays games, you don't react. When she creates tension, you don't scramble to fix it. When there's silence, you let it breathe. That silence is not a void. It's where her mind begins to wander. And trust me, if your energy is rooted, she starts wondering about you long after the moment ends. Because in a world full of men trying too hard, the one who doesn't try stands out. That's not laziness. That's composure. That's emotional leadership. That's what confidence looks like when it's real. So ask yourself this. Am I seeking her permission to feel worthy? Or am I showing up as a man who already knows his value? Because when you stop performing and start embodying, that's when she leans in, and not because you forced it, but because you gave her something no one else does. A calm presence that doesn't ask for approval. Let your energy say what your mouth never has to. Let your silence speak what words can't carry. And let your confidence lead the way, because when it's real, you never have to convince her. She feel it. There's a kind of exhaustion most women carry, one that you can't see on the surface. It's not from work or lack of sleep. It's from over-explaining themselves, day after day, relationship after relationship. They've been asked to justify their emotions, decode their own silences, and make their pain digestible. They're tired of saying, I'm fine, and knowing no one really hears it. They're tired of feeling like they're too much, too emotional, too deep, too sensitive. They're tired of trying to translate their intuition into something that sounds logical, just to be taken seriously. And here's the tragedy. Most men don't even notice this. They're too focused on how to respond, what to say next, how to fix it. They think the answer is always in doing more. But the men who get it, the ones women feel safest with, they don't chase the solution. They feel the shift. They don't need her to explain the energy in the room. They just notice. They stay still. They say, you don't have to talk right now. I just want you to know. I see you, that moment. That tiny moment of real presence. It hits like nothing else. Because for the first time in a long time, she doesn't have to perform. She doesn't have to narrate her emotions in a way that makes sense to someone else. She can just exist, and that space, that's rare. Let me paint this with a real-world example. Say you're with her. It's been a quiet night. She's been distant, a little off. Now most guys will either push in. What's wrong? Are you mad? Just tell me already. Or back away completely, thinking, well, she'd talk when she's ready, not my problem. But there's a third path. A higher path. You simply look at her and ask, want to go for a walk? No pressure to talk, just walk. That's presence. That's emotional leadership. That's what it means to be attuned, not just physically, but energetically. Women aren't asking you to become their therapist. They're asking you to notice them, to be aware enough to sense when their energy shifts, and respectful enough not to force them to explain it before they're ready. Because when you create that kind of space, you're doing something that goes far beyond comfort. You're giving her permission to be human, to be complex, to not have it all figured out. And ironically, that's when she opens. Not because you asked the perfect question, but because she could finally stop translating her soul just to be understood. Let's bring this back to Stoicism. A Stoic man doesn't react to every emotional ripple. He doesn't try to control the storm. He becomes the lighthouse. He doesn't force connection. He allows it. He doesn't chase clarity. He embodies it, and in doing so, he becomes the one person in her life who doesn't make her feel like she's too much. So here's a question for you to sit with. Can I be the kind of man who listens, not just to her words, but to what exists in the space between them? Because that's where trust lives. That's where intimacy begins. Not in the explanations, but in the unspoken understanding. If you've ever felt like no matter how hard you try, she doesn't feel close to you, it might not be because you said the wrong thing. It might be because you never gave her room to breathe. So start here. Don't talk more. Don't fix more. Be more present. Let her silence be safe around you. Let her emotions be accepted without a solution. Let her heart unfold at its own pace. Because the moment she senses that you're not here to judge or repair, but simply to feel with her, that's when the walls come down. That's when she begins to trust, not just you, but herself, in your presence. And that, my friend, is the kind of understanding that changes everything. There's a kind of silence that speaks louder than words ever could. And when a man learns how to use that silence, not as a weapon, but as wisdom, he becomes something rare, something magnetic, something unforgettable. That's clear. Something up first. Masculine silence is not the same as emotional withdrawal. It's not stonewalling. It's not passive aggression. And it's definitely not about punishing someone by refusing to speak. No. This silence is different. It's a stillness that holds its ground. A form of emotional self-command that stays steady when things around you start to shake. Because here's the truth. Most men react. She gets upset, and they try to defend themselves. She pulls back, and they chase. She tests their patience, and they fall apart trying to prove their worth. But Stoic men, they don't flinch. They don't fold into the moment. They remain composed, not because they don't care, but because they won't be pulled out of their frame. That, right there, that's emotional leadership. And women feel it on a level they often can't put into words. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where she said something just to get a rise out of you? A passive-aggressive comment, a sarcastic remark, a subtle dig that hit a little too close to home. Now pause and reflect. How did you respond? If you're like most men, your instinct was probably to snap back, explain yourself, or reassert control. But what if instead of reacting, you just paused? What if you let the silence hold that moment, instead of your ego? Imagine this. She throws the jab. You hear it. You breathe. You look at her, steady, calm, and say nothing. You don't storm out. You don't fight. You don't explain your character. You just hold the space. That's not avoidance. That's dominance. Without force. Because real strength doesn't rush to defend itself. It doesn't get rattled by emotional noise. It stays grounded, present, and centered. And in that moment, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. You don't control how I respond. I do. You're not trying to win. You're not trying to impress. You're simply choosing composure over chaos. And that contrast between her emotional intensity and your quiet presence creates an emotional polarity that's hard to ignore. She starts to feel something she didn't expect, respect, maybe even desire. Because deep down, she's not trying to break you. She's trying to see if you'll stay steady when she can't. Women test not to punish you, but to find out where your emotional edges are. And when you pass those tests not with arguments, but with grounded stillness, something shifts. Inside her, she feels safe. Not because you said the right thing, but because your energy told her, I don't need to control this moment, I am the moment. Here's where it gets even deeper. In a world that's addicted to noise, validation, and constant reaction, a man who uses silence as a sacred pause becomes rare. And rare becomes magnetic. This is what Stoicism teaches us. Not to be cold, not to be distant, but to be deliberate. To know that not every emotion deserves a reaction, and not every conflict needs to be won. You become the eye of the storm. Unmoved, rooted, respected. So the next time you're tempted to argue, to over-explain, to defend, try this instead. Breathe. Say nothing. Hold the gaze. Let your stillness speak. She hear it. She feel it. And most importantly, she trust it. Because in that moment, you're not just a man who talks strong. You become a man who is strong. So ask yourself, can I remain calm in emotional chaos? Can I lead a moment without needing to dominate? If you can, that's when you stop being another guy she dates and start becoming the man whose presence she trusts with her softness. Not because you raised your voice, not because you won the debate, but because your silence made her feel more held than any sentence ever could. Be that man. Let me ask you something most men never think about. When was the last time you held someone's gaze and didn't flinch? Not just glanced, not looked away halfway through a conversation, but really held it. Steady, calm, rooted. There's a kind of eye contact that doesn't just make an impression, it leaves a mark. And here's the truth. Most guys can't hold it. Because most guys aren't grounded in themselves. They look, then immediately look away. Not because they're shy, but because something deep inside them starts to squirm. Am I saying the right thing? Does she like me? Is this getting awkward? And guess what? She feels that. Women are incredibly attuned to microsignals. They may not consciously say it, but they register every twitch, every blink, every shift in energy. And when you can't hold her gaze, especially in moments of tension, vulnerability, or silence, it tells her something. You're not fully there. Now, I'm not talking about staring contests. I'm not saying you need to lock eyes like some kind of power move. I'm talking about a very specific kind of presence. The kind that says, I see you, and I'm not afraid of what I see. That level of presence is rare. And because it's rare, it's powerful. Let's break it down. When you hold deep eye contact, not from force, but from stillness, a few things happen. First, you ground yourself. You can't fake it. It brings you into the moment, into your body, into your breath. It says to her, and more importantly, to yourself, I belong here. Second, it cuts through her defenses. Maybe she's guarded. Maybe she's testing. Maybe she's trying to stay in control. But when your gaze doesn't flinch, when it stays soft but unshakable, it bypasses the surface and goes straight to the emotional core. That's not manipulation. That's presence. Third, it changes the emotional rhythm of the moment. People expect you to look away, to stammer, to overtalk. But when you just stay there, calm, silent, observant, it disrupts the script. Suddenly, you're not just in the room. You own the space, and she feels it. Not because you're being intense, but because you're not performing. This kind of eye contact is not about dominance. It's about stillness. It's about showing up without needing to prove anything. And that's what makes it attractive. Because when a woman feels the steadiness behind your eyes, she senses something deeper. A man who's not running from himself. A man who's not reacting to every emotion in the room. A man who can hold space. Now, here's where most men get it wrong. They try to use eye contact as a strategy. They think if they hold it long enough, it'll build attraction. But here's the truth. If you're using it as a trick, she'll feel it instantly. Your body might be still, but your energy will be frantic. Because eye contact is a mirror. It doesn't reflect your technique, it reflects your state. If you're anxious, she'll feel anxiety. If you're performing, she'll feel performance. But if you're present, deeply rooted in who you are, she'll feel that too. So how do you get there? You start internally, with the decision to stop running from discomfort, with the practice of staying still when everything in you wants to move, with the choice to meet her eyes, not to convince, but to connect. And here's a challenge for you. The next time you're in conversation with anyone, hold eye contact for 1 second longer than you normally would, not to prove a point, not to seem cool, but to notice what comes up inside you, because that tension you feel, that's your growth edge. That's where presence is built. And if you've been the kind of man who looks down too fast, who breaks the moment because it's uncomfortable, now's your moment to shift. Because when you stop flinching, people stop treating you like a man who breaks under pressure. You want her to remember you long after the conversation ends. Don't talk more. Don't try harder. Just look at her with calm. And stay. That's not just attractive. That's unforgettable. Let's get one thing straight. Mystery is not about hiding. It's not about playing games. And it's definitely not about being emotionally distant or vague just to seem cool. That's not mystery. That's immaturity in disguise. True mystery, the kind that pulls people in without effort, is something completely different. It's not about what you withhold. It's about what you don't feel the need to explain. Let me explain. We live in a time where oversharing is almost expected. People talk endlessly about their traumas, their exes, their wounds, their opinions. And sure, there's value in vulnerability when it's real and when it's earned. But many men overshare not from openness, but from a deep craving for approval. They pour everything out hoping it will make them look deep or authentic. But often, it just ends up feeling like emotional clutter. Women can feel that. They sense when you're trying to impress them with how much pain you've survived. And while they might listen, they're not leaning in, they're observing. Now contrast that with a man who feels like a novel, not a flyer, someone with layers, not just labels. A man with stories, yes, but stories he doesn't rush to tell. There's something magnetic about that. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly intrigued you? Not because they were loud, but because they were composed? Because they carried themselves like there was more under the surface, but they weren't offering it all at once. That's mysterious depth. It's the man who listens more than he speaks, who doesn't interrupt silence with noise, who shares just enough to spark curiosity, but not so much that nothing's left to discover. And here's the paradox: the less he tries to be interesting, the more interesting he becomes, because true mystery comes from self-containment, from being so aligned with your identity, your purpose, your inner world, that you don't need to expose it all in order to feel seen. It's not about withholding out of fear. It's about choosing not to overshare out of respect for your own depth. Think about this in the context of dating. You're on a first or second date. She asks, "So, what happened with your last relationship?" You could launch into a 10-minute monologue, telling her all the details, the drama, the heartbreak. Or you could pause, smile, and say, "Let's just say it taught me a lot. But I'd rather show you who I've become than explain who I used to be." That answer? That lands differently. Because now you're not hiding anything. You're just choosing to reveal yourself slowly, with purpose. And whether she knows it or not, she's leaning in. Because the unknown, when handled with calm and confidence, is incredibly attractive. Here's the deeper layer. Mystery isn't about seeming deep. It's about actually being deep. It's about living a life that matters to you, even when no one's watching. Having passions, ideas, convictions that aren't tied to anyone's opinion. Not because you want to be impressive, but because you're aligned. And that's what Stoicism teaches us. The Stoic man doesn't overshare to feel significant. He doesn't need the world to witness every chapter of his story. He lets his presence speak. He lets his actions reveal the parts of his character that words can't reach. So here's the question for you. Are you giving too much of yourself too soon? Hoping someone else will give your story meaning? If so, it's time to shift. Start subtracting. Start holding back, not from fear, but from power. Let your story unfold naturally. Let people earn the next chapter. Because when you do that, you invite something rare. Curiosity. And curiosity builds tension. Tension builds depth. And depth creates connection. Be the man she wants to read slowly, not the one who's already given away the last page. Let's make something clear right now. Passion is not enough. Sure, it's loud, exciting, and captivating in the moment. But passion without direction? It burns fast. And then it burns out. And while many men think their intensity is attractive, that their fire will win her over, what women are really drawn to is something quieter. Something stronger. Purpose. Because passion might catch her attention, but purpose is what makes her feel safe. Let's break this down. Passion is emotional energy. It's excitement. It's the guy who talks a mile a minute about his ideas, the one who's always starting something new. He's on fire, and it's contagious. But after a while, she starts to notice he's scattered. He's inconsistent. He's driven, but not directed. And without direction, that energy becomes noise. It feels unstable, unanchored. But a man with purpose, he moves differently. He's not frantic. He's focused. He doesn't need to tell you what he's about. You feel it in how he carries himself. He doesn't need constant reassurance or applause. He's too busy building, too committed to what matters, even when no one's watching. That's the kind of man who grounds her. That's the kind of man who makes her nervous system exhale. Because here's something most men don't realize. A woman's sense of safety doesn't just come from how you treat her. It comes from how you lead yourself. If your emotions control you, if your goals shift every week, if your schedule is chaos, she feel that and she guard herself. But if your life has structure, if your energy has rhythm, if your words align with your actions, that gives her something rare in this world. Stability. Now, let's bring in the Stoic lens. The Stoics taught us that a man's power is in his principles, not his performance. A Stoic man doesn't hustle to be admired. He works with intention. He knows what he's building. He understands that purpose is what gives life meaning, not applause. He wakes up and asks, what deserves my energy today? Not, what will get me noticed? That's the man who becomes irresistible. Not because he's flashy, but because he's firm. Because in a world full of men chasing validation, the man who lives from purpose stands out without even trying. So what does this look like in real life? Let's say you're building a business, creating art, raising your kids with intention, volunteering for something bigger than yourself. You're doing it not for recognition, but because it aligns with who you are. That energy, it speaks louder than anything you say. She can sense it in how you move, how you decide, how you show up. And suddenly, you don't have to prove anything, because your presence proves it for you. Here's a truth most people won't tell you. The less you seek approval, the more attractive you become, because now you're no longer consumable. You're not chasing love, you're living in alignment. And that's rare. Ask yourself, what am I building that would still matter, even if no one clapped for it? If you can answer that with honesty, you're already ahead of 90% of men. Purpose is what gives you direction when passion fades. It's what holds you steady when emotions shift. It's what keeps your relationships honest, your standards high, and your boundaries clear. And if you've spent most of your life chasing passion, trying to impress her with intensity, trying to keep her attention with excitement, it might be time to pivot. Slow down. Get quiet. RECALIBRATE. What are you here to serve? What legacy are you shaping, one small decision at a time? Because when you live from that place, you stop being just interesting. You become anchored. And she feels it. Not because you told her, but because it's written in how you move through the world. That's the kind of man she trusts. That's the kind of man she softens around. Not because he's perfect, but because his compass is real. Let's talk about something that most men either misunderstand or completely miss. Woman's secret desire to be led. Now wait, don't get it twisted. We're not talking about domination. We're not talking about control, manipulation, or trying to be the alpha by barking orders. That's not leadership. That's insecurity wearing a mask. Real leadership, the kind that she respects, softens to, and trusts, is something much quieter. It's emotional presence. It's steadiness. It's being the calm in the chaos, not the cause of it. See, many men fall into two traps. They either try to control everything, constantly deciding, directing, micromanaging, or they do the opposite. They back off completely, thinking that leadership is toxic, or that letting her lead everything is somehow noble. Both extremes leave her feeling off balance. Because deep in her core, whether she admits it or not, she doesn't want to be controlled. But she does want to feel safe enough to relax. And that kind of safety doesn't come from power. It comes from presence. Here's what I mean. When you walk into a room and your energy says, "I'm good, I'm clear. I know who I am, and I know where I'm going." She feels it, even if no words are spoken. That clarity, that self-mastery, it creates something rare for her. A space where she can finally stop managing everything. Think about how many women today are used to leading at work, in life, in relationships. They've had to be strong. They've had to be planners, decision makers, protectors. So when she meets a man who knows how to lead without overpowering, a man who can say, "Here's what I see, here's what I think, but I trust you to choose. I've got your back either way." That kind of leadership, it hits different. It doesn't make her feel small. It makes her feel held, because the truth is, she's not testing you just to be difficult. She's testing to see if your frame holds when pressure rises. If you collapse when she's emotional, if you lash out when she spirals, if you disappear when she gets messy, then she knows, deep down, she can't lean on you. And if she can't lean, she never fully relax. And if she can't relax, she never fully open. So here's the real challenge. Can you lead her emotionally, without trying to control her? Can you stand firm when she storms? Listen without needing to fix. Breathe when you want to explode. Stay present when she's unraveling, because that's leadership. Not force, but internal direction. Not volume, but clarity. You're not guiding with pressure. You're guiding with your energy. And that's what her feminine side is craving. Even if she never says it out loud, let me give you something practical. You're out with her. The night's gone sideways. Maybe she's overwhelmed, frustrated. In her head, you could say, "What's wrong with you? You're ruining the vibe." Or you could pause, gently take her hand and say, "Hey, let's get some fresh air. No rush, just us." You didn't demand, you didn't fix. You led with presence. And that shift? It's everything. Because real leadership isn't about being in control of her. It's about being in control of yourself and offering her your calm as an anchor. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And a free man, a centered man, leads with virtue, not ego. So ask yourself, when things get messy, do I lead with my energy, or do I lose myself in hers? Because when you can hold the frame, when you can guide the emotional rhythm without overpowering the moment, that's when she begins to trust you, not just with her body, but with her softness. And that kind of trust, it's rare. And once you earn it, you don't need to force anything. She follows naturally, not because she has to, but because you've created this space where she finally can. Let me tell you something that most men never learn. It's not your status, not your car, not even your actions that leave a lasting mark on her. It's your words, but not just any words. Not the clever lines, not the recycled compliments, not the loud declarations trying to prove you care. I'm talking about words that paint new worlds, words that open doors in her mind she thought were long locked. Words that reach into the hidden corners of her emotional landscape and make her feel something she hasn't felt in a long time. Or maybe ever, because here's the truth. Women live in emotion. They remember tone more than fact. They remember how something was said, not just what was said. So when you speak with intention, when your words come not from ego but from presence, you stop being a man with a voice. You become a man with a vision. And that changes everything. Let me paint you an example. She walks in wearing something simple. Most guys would say, "You look great tonight." It's fine. It's polite. It's forgettable. But the man who's present might say, "There's something about the way you walk into a room. Like the air changes. Like things get quieter around you." Now pause. What did you really do there? You didn't just praise her appearance. You showed her the effect she has on the world. You reflected her essence back to her in a way that surprised her, moved her, made her stop and feel. That's the power of language. And here's what most men miss. You don't have to be poetic. You don't need flowery words or rehearsed lines. You just need to be aware, to pay attention, to speak from clarity, not performance. Ask yourself this: when I speak, am I just filling silence, or am I creating meaning? Because words are more than sounds. They're emotional architecture. They build rooms she wants to walk into and stay in. They become memories. They become anchors. They become safe places she carries with her, even when you're not around. Think about that. Have you ever had someone say something to you that stayed for years? A sentence, a phrase, a moment. Something simple, but said with such precision that it shaped how you saw yourself. That's what women experience when a man speaks with emotional intelligence. When he's rooted. When he sees beyond the surface and dares to name the invisible. Here's the deeper truth. She doesn't want noise. She wants mirrors. She wants to hear herself more clearly through you. Not because you're telling her who to be, but because you're reflecting back what's already inside her. With reverence. That takes presence. That takes stillness. That takes the discipline to see before you speak. And yes, it takes risk. Because when you speak like this, you're not performing. You're revealing something about yourself too. Your stillness, your attention, your values. She feels that. She may not say it, but her guard will drop. Even just a little. Because now, you're not a man fighting for her attention. You're a man giving her space to feel more. Herself. And here's the most beautiful part. When you learn to speak this way, with this kind of vision, you don't just attract her. You elevate her. You remind her that connection isn't always physical. That intimacy can happen across a dinner table, or even in silence, as long as your words carry truth. So the next time you talk to her, ask yourself, am I saying this to be impressive? Or am I saying it to be honest? Because words that come from performance fade, but words that come from presence, they echo. Not just in her mind, but in her heart. Let's talk about something raw. Something most men don't want to hear, but need to. A woman will never truly respect a man who's afraid to walk away. That might sound cold. It might even feel harsh. But it's the kind of truth that separates a man who constantly doubts himself from one who commands quiet admiration without needing to raise his voice. Let's break it down. See, most men are taught, directly or indirectly, that if you love someone, you stay. You bend, you compromise endlessly. You tolerate more than you should, because we confuse loyalty with self-abandonment. And over time, without realizing it, many men become emotionally dependent, not just on love, but on approval, on not rocking the boat, on keeping the connection alive, even when it's slowly killing their self-worth. But here's the reality: the more you cling, the less she respects, because deep down, the feminine energy isn't drawn to the man who needs her to feel whole. It's drawn to the man who chooses her, but never chases at the expense of his own dignity. And here's the paradox: the moment she senses you don't need her is the moment she starts to admire you. Not because you're playing games, not because you're cold, but because self-respect is magnetic. Let's be clear: walking away doesn't mean ghosting. It doesn't mean punishing her with silence. It doesn't mean threatening to leave every time something doesn't go your way. Walking away means you know your value. You know when the connection has stopped serving both of you. You know when staying becomes an act of weakness, not love. And that kind of discernment, that's rare, because it's built on inner strength, not ego. Let me paint a picture. You're dating someone. She starts pulling away, less responsive, less engaged. You feel it, that shift. Now you've got a choice. You can start chasing harder, sending more texts, trying to win her back with effort, explanation, and emotional labor. Or you can pause, step back, observe what the moment is asking from you, not what your fear is demanding. Because chasing when your worth is being neglected doesn't build connection. It builds resentment, both ways. Instead, when you walk with quiet confidence, you let her feel something powerful. I want you, but I don't need to beg for your presence. That's not arrogance. That's alignment, because the truth is, polarity dies the moment a woman feels she's more grounded than the man she's with. If you're the one who always sacrifices, always overextends, always tries harder, eventually the energy flips, and suddenly you're not her partner, you're her emotional project. She doesn't want that. You don't want that. But without clear boundaries and inner self-respect, that's where many men end up. So how do you shift? Start here. Ask yourself, what version of me am I becoming by staying in this dynamic? Am I shrinking or standing tall? Is this relationship bringing me into my power or pulling me away from it? If the answer is hard to swallow, that's good, because growth lives there. And sometimes the most loving, most powerful, most masculine thing you can do is to walk, not to hurt her, not to win anything, but to honor yourself. Because the man who can walk away, not in bitterness, but in quiet clarity, he's the man women talk about long after he's gone. He's the one they respect, because he never made his worth negotiable. And here's the truth no one says out loud: she wants to know you'll stay. But she also wants to know that if she disrespects the connection, you'll leave. That's not emotional manipulation. That's emotional maturity. So if you've been bending too far, if you've been giving your peace to stay in something that's draining you, this might be your moment to remember: you are the prize, you are the presence, and your worth is not up for debate. Let's end with something subtle, something quiet, something most men miss, even the emotionally intelligent ones. You can't demand a woman's softness. You can't buy it. You can't force it. You can't coax it out with charm, status, or strategy, because her softness, that deep, nurturing, radiant part of her, isn't a gift she hands to just any man. It's a response. And what it responds to is stillness, not silence to punish, not control disguised as calm, but real, grounded, embodied stillness, the kind that says, nothing you feel will knock me off center. Most women carry armor, and for good reason. They've been hurt, misunderstood, talked over, asked to be feminine while surrounded by men who were too unstable to hold it. So she adapts. She moves faster, gets sharper, becomes more guarded, more independent, because she's learned not to trust that softness has a safe place to land. And then, one day, she meets a man who doesn't try to crack that armor. He simply sits still, breathes, and holds space without asking for anything in return. And for the first time in a long time, she exhales that moment. That's where her softness begins. Not because he demanded it, not because he earned it like a reward, but because his energy created a container, a quiet, sacred space where she could finally let go. The truth is, softness doesn't rise on command. It emerges slowly. When tension dissolves, when presence replaces pressure, when she senses that your nervous system is not trying to take, but to witness. Now here's the catch. You can't fake this. If your calm is just a tactic to get her to open up, she'll feel it. If your stillness is really just suppressed frustration, she'll push against it. But if your stillness comes from real inner command, if you've done the hard work, the silent work, of mastering your mind, your body, your impulses, she trusts it, because women don't open to perfection. They open to presence. And presence is rare. Ask yourself honestly, when she spirals, do I meet her emotion with noise or with breath? When she pulls back, do I chase or stay grounded? Can I hold the moment without needing to fix it? Because the man who can do that, who can remain calm without collapsing, who doesn't flinch when her emotions rise, who sees her and doesn't try to control what he sees, that man becomes the one she softens around, and not because he asked her to, but because his energy finally gave her permission to rest. That's the kind of safety she can't find in a world addicted to urgency. That's the kind of presence that speaks louder than 1,000 promises. Let me give you something practical. The next time she's tense, anxious, or emotionally overwhelmed, don't interrupt. Don't correct. Don't fix. Just listen. Let your posture say, I'm not afraid of this. Let your breath stay slow. Let your eyes stay soft. Let her know, not with words, but with energy, that she doesn't have to carry it all alone. Sometimes she won't even need advice. Sometimes all she needs is to look across the room and see you still, solid like a mountain, while she weathers her storm. And when the storm passes, as it always does, you'll notice something subtle but profound. She touches your arm differently. She looks at you like a man she can trust, not just with facts, but with her emotional skin. That's the moment you know you didn't just attract her. You became safe for her. And in this world, that's everything. So remember, you don't unlock her softness by talking louder, trying harder, or rushing her healing. You unlock it by becoming still enough for it to come forward on its own. Because in the end, it's not about having the right words or the right moves. It's about being the kind of man whose very presence says, you can let go here. I'm not going anywhere. That's how she blooms. That's how she remembers who she really is. And that's how you become the man she doesn't just want, but trusts with her most hidden self. So let's take a breath. After all the insights, all the reminders, all the quiet truths that maybe no one ever said to you out loud, there's one thing I want you to leave with. You don't need tricks. You don't need games. You don't need to perform. What you need is depth. Because the deeper you go into your own being, the more magnetic you become without even trying. When you learn to master your inner world, your outer world begins to respond in ways that feel effortless. It's not about being louder. It's not about being more aggressive. It's not about memorizing pickup lines or dominating every room you walk into. It's about learning how to speak with vision, how to lead with calm, how to walk with quiet purpose. Think about this. When you enter a room, do you shrink to fit it, or do you fill it without saying a word? When you sit across from someone, are you trying to impress or trying to understand? When she pushes, tests, or spirals, do you collapse into the moment or stay centered in who you are? Because the man who knows himself doesn't have to sell himself. And the moment you stop chasing approval, validation, attention, you stop being consumed. You start being remembered. This is the kind of presence that doesn't fade when you leave the room. It lingers. Because it came from somewhere real. It came from stillness, from restraint, from knowing that your energy is enough when you're grounded in truth. That's not ego. That's alignment. And yeah, some people won't get it. Some women won't respond. Some moments won't go the way you wanted. But here's the thing, you're not here to convince anyone. You're here to become someone. Let them misunderstand your stillness. Let them question your silence. Let them misread your calm for detachment. You'll know the truth, because the deeper you go into yourself, the more you'll attract people who feel safe around you, seen by you, respected by you, and the more peace you'll find knowing that you don't need to play the game. You've already outgrown it. So here's what I want you to do right now. Don't scroll away. Don't click on the next thing. Sit for just a second. Let it land. And when you're ready, drop one simple affirmation in the comments. Let the world know the man you're choosing to become. Type this below. I lead with calm. I speak with vision. I walk with worth. I move with purpose. I don't flinch. Whatever line from this video hit you deepest, make it yours. Say it. Type it. Own it. Because repetition creates identity, and identity shapes presence. This isn't about a trend. This isn't about appearing stoic. This is about becoming grounded. So that wherever you go, you don't have to try to be attractive. You just are. You don't need her to feel something. You need to be the kind of man who brings clarity to chaos, softness to tension, and silence to noise. That's what leadership looks like. That's what masculinity feels like. And that's what women remember, not what you said, but who you were. When everything else got loud, if this series spoke to you, don't just nod in silence. Let it echo. Drop your affirmation in the comments. Hit subscribe. And come back tomorrow. We're just getting started. Because when you stop chasing the world and start becoming who you were always meant to be, the world starts to follow. See you in the next one.